um, so it can be a fairly profitable business if that's what you're into. It's very painstaking, a lot of very minute details in creating this font and making it, consistent throughout all the letters and numbers and quotation marks and all this kind of stuff. So, if you're into that, it's definitely, it is something you can make a living doing. So, Illustrator, vector-based, good for logos. You can get a lot of really cool gradients using gradient maps. Um, you can create fonts, design fonts. And used to, Illustrator was sort of like Photoshop. Photoshop, you can only have one file. You can't have like separate pages or anything. Illustrator used to be the same way, where it's basically one document. Now they have and developed in CS4 where you can have multiple pages of different sizes all in the same document. And that comes in really handy if you're doing something for, like say you're doing a whole brand identity and you have a poster and a flyer and a postcard and a business card and all these different things that you kind of want to show the whole brand identity. You can have all these different page sizes all on one, what's called the paste board, which is basically the background for your documents. So that's a pretty neat thing too. I haven't really had much chance to play with that too much because it's relatively new. So that is Illustrator. Let's talk about Quark and InDesign. InDesign is bundled with the other programs, Photoshop and Illustrator, if you get the Adobe Creative Suite. InDesign is relatively new compared to Quark and PageMaker and some of these other programs, but these are all desktop publishing programs. InDesign, Quark, PageMaker, oh gosh, what other? There's some others, I'm sure. But InDesign and Quark are the main ones. PageMaker is not around anymore. InDesign actually replaced PageMaker. But desktop publishing programs used for page layout, and these are really versatile. Use Photoshop and Illustrator to create the content, the images, the illustrations, the photographs, and get them just the way you want them. And InDesign is kind of the framework where you put everything together. Like let's say you can create entire documents in Illustrator and Photoshop, but it's not as intuitive and it's not as simple as if you use InDesign. The correct workflow. Now everybody has a different work style, but the correct workflow that they use, you color correct and adjust the resolution and the color mode and the size and everything of a photo in Photoshop. Then you create a logo in Illustrator. All right. Then in InDesign, you create a file the size of whatever you're going to do. Say you're making a poster, 18 inches by 24 inches. You create an 18 by 24 inch document. There are things, picture boxes and text boxes and all these different things where you import that photo into Photoshop, into InDesign, and put it where you want it on the page. Then you can import the logo from Illustrator and put it on the page. And then you can create text boxes and import all the text from a Word document or wherever it might be stored. You can copy and paste from the internet, whatever your purpose is. So you have text boxes and picture boxes and all this kind of stuff. And that's how you kind of create it. And then you can you can export from InDesign, and it'll automatically create a PDF for you, which is, as we talked about, is viewable by anybody that pretty much has a computer. I think Adobe Reader comes on every computer standard now anyway, and it's free if it doesn't. So anyway, PDF's kind of the universal file, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But anyway, InDesign is kind of the framework for this. So you can create a poster, and you can have text and images and illustrations and all this stuff. But you can also have multiple pages, and there is actually a pages palette on the right side of the screen that has all of these things. Where you can add pages, and you can have different master pages. Like if some pages have different margins or columns, it'll automatically create this kind of framework, this grid for you to follow. We talked about using the grid. InDesign will help you with that. It'll actually create a grid that is not seen when you print something out. But InDesign is mainly used for print design. You can use it. You can publish websites with it, but I've never tried it. I've heard horror stories that it really doesn't do what it says it's going to do, and there are better programs for that. So InDesign is mainly print design program. Page layout. So if you wanted to create, let's say you were doing a 100-page book that's 8.5 by 11. You create, when you create your file, you say 100 pages, 8.5 by 11. Say you want the margin in the middle, the margin on the inside on the spine, where the pages come together, to be half an inch, and the margin on the outside to be a quarter inch. You set all that up when you create the file, and then you can create, it creates the file for you, and you can bring in all your elements. And when you think about laying out something like a book or a brochure or instruction manual, there's a lot of text formatting involved. If all your body copy is going to be 10-point Helvetica, and all your headline copy is going to be 20-point Helvetica bold, it's really nice to not have to go through every section of copy and do that. And InDesign realizes that. So InDesign allows you to create what's called style sheets. If you do any web design, you can create style sheets for web design as well. But basically, you format a text. You might go through and format, headline 1, headline 2, text, body copy, all that kind of stuff. And then basically, you just have to click on a body of copy, and it'll automatically format that with the right leading and kerning and color and size and all that stuff. So style sheets come in really handy when you're doing larger documents. Let's see. There's a lot of other things, capabilities that InDesign has if you're getting more in-depth. There's a lot of things with pre-press. You're creating documents to go to print. There's a lot of things that InDesign can do for you that kind of automates itself. Makes it easier for you to make sure your file is accurate, and it makes it easier for the printer to receive it, and kind of standardizes the printing process. So that's kind of InDesign, mainly print design, desktop publishing program. Unlimited number of pages, sort of a framework. You can bring in text. You can have text boxes, picture boxes, style sheets. You can customize margins and columns. Basically everything you wish you could do in Microsoft Word, but you can't because it does something weird. That's what you can do in InDesign. Let's see, what else we're going to talk about here. Adobe Acrobat. Let's talk about that real quick, because I mentioned it in relation to all these other programs. PDF is the universal document format, basically. And that means whether you're on a Mac or a PC, no matter what programs you have, you can usually view a PDF with something that's already on your computer. PDF stands for Portable Document Format, and they wanted to create this sort of industry standard. So despite the differences, different software and hardware people have, they can still view a document. Because sometimes if you create something in Microsoft Word and you send somebody a Word file and they don't have the same fonts that you have, it's going to get all screwy. It's going to look really weird. Or even sometimes if it just goes from PC to Mac, there are certain font spacing is a little bit different, so it might kick a word over, which if you have a long document, it's going to drastically affect the layout of the document. So when you create PDFs, it doesn't do that. Basically, you can create a PDF and it's going to look exactly the same no matter what computer opens it, no matter who uses it, because it automatically, it creates outlines of the fonts, which is we talked about vector graphics. It creates vector outlines of the fonts of each letter. So you don't have to have that font on the computer of whoever you send it to, and it's still going to look the same. Basically flattens everything and creates this image that looks exactly like you want it to look. So that's why PDFs are so versatile. Anytime I'm sending a client a sample of what a layout's going to look like, I use a PDF. Actually, printers nowadays with digital printing, they create PDFs to actually print from. They'll create plates, a cyan plate, a magenta plate, a yellow plate, and a black plate that are, have the different color inks on them, and they'll use PDFs to create those. Fixed layout, universal. That's pretty much all I wanted to say about Acrobat. Acrobat Reader allows you to print and view PDFs, and like I said, that's completely free. Adobe Acrobat Pro is more robust, and I think you can actually create documents, and you can do digital signatures and all that kind of stuff. But that's that's kind of a different thing. That's